Americans, the media worked closely with the White House to conceal the truth that was on display last night. President Biden is not fit to discharge the immense duties of the presidency. The alarming evidence of his cognitive decline was on display for all to witness. Yet his enablers and political allies continue to exploit the president to substitute their destructive agenda for the interests of the American people. The unconscionable betrayal of the sacred trust that must exist between the federal government and American citizens is all around us. Destructive executive orders and policy directives, many of which were likely signed when President Biden was in a rapidly diminished state of mind, inflicted tremendous damage on our nation. By opening our southern border, unelected men and women in the White House allowed millions of migrants to illegally enter our country. To these must be added lethal drugs like fentanyl and the endless numbers of human traffickers surging into our communities, jeopardizing the safety and security of our families, especially our children. The executive orders related to energy policy prioritized the demands of climate change advocates over the needs of hardworking Americans. The outcome is skyrocketing energy costs and the end of our energy independence. This is not governance. This is pandering. Reckless spending and money printing has triggered record high inflation. This is not the leadership we deserve. The deliberate subversion of the presidency also extends to foreign and defense policy. President Biden's manipulators fueled a proxy war in Ukraine that risks drawing us into a catastrophic confrontation with nuclear-armed Russia. Their unqualified support for Israel's disproportionate actions in Gaza erodes our moral authority and credibility as a champion of peace and stability. These actions drained our defense resources and compromised our moral standing in the world. Sadly, President Biden's fragile mental state was laid bare for all to see in last night's debate. His responses were frequently incoherent. He appeared lost, even confused, struggling to complete basic thoughts. It was heartbreaking, a spectacle that confirmed our worst fears about his deteriorating capacity. No individual whose mental health is compromised should be allowed to continue in the most demanding job on earth. Americans, we find ourselves at a critical juncture in our nation's journey. In the private sector or in matters of estate planning, the validity of signatures made under such circumstances would be challenged and invalidated in a court of law. How can we accept crucial national decisions being made under these conditions? The American people deserve better. It is time to ask, who truly governs this country? Is it we the people, as our founders intended, or have we surrendered control to unelected bureaucrats, sprawling federal agencies and affluent donors who do not have the best interests of ordinary Americans at heart? To secure the blessings of liberty for this generation and those to come, we must reclaim the rightful sovereignty of the American people over a dysfunctional and unresponsive political establishment. We cannot tolerate more aimless, self-defeating leadership and unaccountable governance. We confront existential threats at home, and the Biden administration has cultivated hatred and hostility to the United States abroad. President Biden should retire with grace and dignity and not be cruelly exploited in the twilight of his life. To say it's a national shame is an understatement. This travesty should end immediately. It is now obvious that the governing power to determine our nation's destiny lies in unelected hands. Americans must raise their voices in opposition to this administration. The power belongs to the American people. We must signal our discontent with policies we did not vote for: open borders, wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, soaring inflation, uncontrolled immigration, and demand the right to register our indignation at the ballot box. In view of the questionable legitimacy of the many executive orders issued under President Biden's signature, Americans should consider holding the presidential election early. It's time for Americans to demand a new government that is legitimate, one that is devoted to peace abroad and prosperity at home. It is a time for unity, a time to go forward and begin the next chapter of the most remarkable story ever told, the story of the United States of America. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and may God bless these United States.